Part 3.
Go to patreon.com/HalloweenIsForever and you sign up. You get the Rascals tier, $5 a month. And guess what? You got Family is Forever, which is our Fast and the Furious series.
Yes.
You got Youth Group is Forever.
Yes.
That's the Christian horror films. But starting in this month, in the month of March, we have our brand new series starting. It's going to be called The 90s is Forever Comedy Edition.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. If that sounds like fun for you, and then you want to go back and listen to our, probably at this point, honest to God, 60 hours of other content on the Patreon exclusive podcast series, which you'll have access to, go over and sign up on patreon.com/Halloween is Forever. And you get all that stuff. Plus, you can join us here in the Discord, as we oftentimes have some friends here, just like tonight, joining us as we record live in the Discord. So, and as always, I'll be honest with you, I've been real bad about it because I've made a conscious effort to remove as much social media from my life as humanly possible. But if you want to interact with us on the internets, you can go do so at Halloween's Forever on any of the various social media platforms, or send us an email. If you want one of them old-fashioned emails, you can send it to us at halloweenisforeverpod@gmail.com as well. So let's get into the final flick of the evening. This is my choice for Victorian horror. We're going to talk about 1994's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. This movie is directed and starring one Mr. Kenneth Branagh. Plays Victor Frankenstein. He has directed 26 films. I mean, you'll know him probably most recently in Oppenheimer, but he's been in a million things. He definitely is one that shows up in a lot of, I would kind of describe as Oscar bait type of movies. Oftentimes, for better or for worse. And then in recent years has directed some big Murder on the Orient Express, like highbrowish type of stuff, I'll say, or attempted to be highbrowish type of stuff.
Man, I don't even know if I'd get. Okay, so I don't call the Murder on the Orient Express and all that, like, he's been doing the Agatha Christie Poirot kind of adaptations for the big
in
screen.
Venice, all that stuff. Yeah.
I don't think of those as highbrow. Those were pulp novels at the time. Like, Agatha Christie is Agatha Christie is the fucking, she was like the Dan Brown of the time. So okay, like, I don't think they're bad, but I wouldn't call them highbrow. I think it's just like what everybody would be reading. Branagh, though, does have a highbrow bend to him because his one thing he loves to do is to adapt Shakespeare for the screen. And so I think the most famous thing everybody would know him for, if you're of our age, is I think we all had to watch the 1996 adaptation of Hamlet that he did.
Hamlet. We had to watch Henry V too.
Mm-hmm. Which is his first directorial credit, is doing Henry V.
Mm-hmm.
And then he also did Much Ado About Nothing and A Midwinter's Tale. So, he doesn't direct a whole lot, considering his career has been, since the 80s, late 80s. But his one big weird one that he has in there is he directed the Marvel Thor.
The 2013 one. So I was going to say, like, when he did, but didn't he also do an older adaptation as well? I want to say he did another old. Nah, maybe I'm wrong about that. I thought he did an older superhero thing, and that's why they called him back. But no, doesn't look to be the case.
No, maybe as an actor he had something in a hand of that. But no, he was, for some reason they tapped him to direct the Thor film. And it's kind of really hard to even tell that he directed it. It's all of those.
He's directing by committee, big budget, corporate fucking movies.
Yeah. All those Marvel films are just kind of like, you see flashes every now and then, like the ones that Sam Raimi directed. like not the Spider-Man films, but he directed a Doctor Strange movie. And
I didn't see that.
You see Flash as a Raimi in there, but most people hated it. They hated that there were Raimi in there. They just wanted their fucking slop to look the same as the other slop. They didn't like that the slop had iris wipes and, you know, weird double photography and, you know, extreme close-ups and shit like that. They didn't like that. That upset them. So they wanted their slop to look the same. And then his slop doesn't, you know, his movie didn't look like the rest of the slop, and it bummed him out. So
sure. Definitely some big name people in here. I mean, most notably Robert De Niro plays the creature, aka Frankenstein's monster. Like I said, Kenneth Branagh himself plays Victor Frankenstein. We get Helena Bonham Carter as Elizabeth. We get, I think, a pretty good performance by one Mr. Tom Hunts, who most of you would know. I mean, probably most notably as from the movie Amadeus, of which he is the star, plays Mozart in Amadeus. But then I was introduced to him at a young age and recognized him immediately as Larry, aka Pinto from Animal House. But he's in a lot of things. I mean, Ian Holmes in this. John Cleese of Monty Python fame is in this. A lot of recognizable faces pop up. This movie, it was very much a, I don't know if I want to call it an Oscar bait movie, but it was nominated for an Oscar. I don't know what it was nominated for. Let's see if I can find out.
Could be production or set design. That would make sense to me. But
yeah.
Best makeup, actually.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
But it was very much done. It reminded me, especially that intro scene, of those like big mid-century Hollywood epics. You know, that you would expect. I mean, I always think of like the 10 Commandments and stuff like that. Ben-Hur, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing that Branagh is really good at. He's really good at scale and spectacle and grandiosity. He's great at, doing all those things.
Yeah.
This film is obviously a direct response to Coppola making the Dracula in 1992, and they fucking you know how the studios go. One thing hits, and now we got to make 100 fucking copies of it.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because it has such a different feel to it. I mean, Coppola's Dracula is much more stylized, whereas this is definitely stylized. Don't get me wrong, but this is a little bit like, not a little bit, a lot of it like grimier. Definitely less glamorous feel to it. Not I think they do try to make this a little bit more like sexualized, but it doesn't land quite like that. Some of the sequences, I mean, ultimately this is a much more gruesome, gritty, and very much accurate take to the novel. Although they do take some liberties. I think the interesting thing is they stick closer in the sense that it is the whole like modern Prometheus element and all the moral and ethical dilemmas that come to the forefront and frankly are the most interesting parts of Mary Shelley's story play a more prominent part. But I would be lying if I said there wasn't some missteps on the way, and this movie I'll say right at the top suffers from the same thing that a lot of movies that are based on kind of big sprawling epic novels, which is if they're going to remain faithful to that really expansive story and this really famous novel, this really famous story, pacing is wild in this movie.
Pacing is fucking crazy. It's better to be fast than slow, I guess. But if they didn't pace it the way they do,
this movie would be 4.5 hours long.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's
So
one of
much
my
happens in that story. Just so much happens.
Yeah. One of my notes is this. It feels like it would have been better as a 4-part PBS series.
Oh, 100% would have been. It's like how they're never gonna make a movie of The Stand that's
right. Yeah,
makes sense, right?
Yeah.
They're never gonna make a movie. I mean, they always talk about. I just finished reading Blood Meridian by Cormac McCarthy, and they always say that's the unfilmable movie, mostly because of the unbelievable amount of brutal violence, but also it's just so much happens. You read one chapter and you're like, a million things happened. It would just be impossible to film them all.
Yeah. I mean, they say that, but on the other hand, Lord of the Rings exists as a series. But I mean,
yeah, but that's 3-hour movies.
I know, I understand. I'm just saying, like you can do it, but you have to be willing to commit. You have to have a fanatic like Peter Jackson who's willing to commit the rest, 10 years of his fucking life or whatever. But yeah, like The Stand can't be a movie, and it's been adapted twice as miniseries. Or was it a miniseries and then just like a regular TV series? The second time it came around? Yeah.
I think so. I've never watched any incarnations of it just because I know I'm probably going to hate it because I love the book. And there's so much.
You never watched
I never watched any of the, I mean, I've seen clips of it. Like I know some of the people were in it, but I've never watched it just because it's like, I mean, Stephen King, also one of my favorite authors, but so indulgent in his in himself as a writer. Like he'll just be like, no issues spending 5 pages describing someone's like facial hair or something.
We've definitely talked about that before about with describing somebody's cum soaked sheets in Cujo. I was just gonna say that the Stand, also from 94, has Matt Frewer in it and Ozzie Davis.
Yeah. And didn't they do like another one years later where it's like who the heck is in the more recent one? Maybe it was a TV one. It's a big name. Is Whoopi Goldberg? That's not who I'm thinking though.
Alexander Skarsgård?
No. Fart. Maybe I'm thinking of something different. Anyway, I don't know why we're
thinking of The Dark Tower.
Yes, I'm thinking of The Dark Tower. Yes. Because that had a big name in it. Who was it?
Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey as Flag.
Yeah. I was thinking of Idris Elba in the Dark Towers.
Yeah.
Anyway, we start off with this ship, looking for a northern pass. Looking for the Northern Passage, which was like a big thing of the exploration of the period. So crashes on an iceberg. There's talk of mutiny, but there's something going on the ice, right? Which very familiar story, sounds like the Terror as well. Like it's the setup for the Terror. But some dude comes rolling up and warns them. The dogs go after it. He's like, now that your dogs are dead already. The dogs are promptly killed. You hear a bunch of weird moaning out on the ice. And we find out that duder who stumbled upon the crashed ship that's now frozen is one Mr. Victor Frankenstein. And he's been chasing the monster. And if you know the book, like that's basically like the last act of the book is like he's out, on his revenge tour. So, I think they framed up pretty well for a story that a lot of people will know the ending to because it's a couple hundred years old and obviously very, very famous. But I think also they did a pretty good balancing act, knowing that most people who saw this, not the Academy necessarily, but the average Joe on the street probably only knows the story from the Universal flick, which is dramatically different.
Very much so, yeah.
This is an example of a part in the book which is like multiple entire chapters are all about Victor's childhood in Geneva and his relationship with his adopted, and I'll use the term sister in quotation marks because it was like a family friend kind of thing whose family, her parents died and then she ends up coming to live with them. So they're like playmates, almost a brother and sister relationship as a kid. Of course, they're not blood related. And as they get older, it develops into a more dependent relationship and then ultimately a romantic one. But this whole, like, their childhood is a 20-second scene of like, hey, Elizabeth, meet Victor. We're friends now. Yay. Like that's pretty much all you get. Then cut to 30 seconds later and Victor is now Branagh and he's a young man, working towards his career. So this is what we talked about where the pacing is fast and furious. And this movie is over 2 hours long, just a hair over 2 hours long. Mm-hmm. And it could have easily been 3 and probably would have made more sense, like you said, as a TV miniseries.
Yeah. I mean, just the first part of the miniseries would have ended on, like the lightning striking the tree as his mom died. Like that would have been the end of part 1.
Yep. It would have been as his mom died, which is essentially where we're at right now. But like, yeah, his mom, who is this like happy-go-lucky woman, but she, whatever. She dies during childbirth of giving birth to Victor's much younger brother, William. And he becomes like, he's like the kind of, everyone's like, beloved little special boy in the book and is not really portrayed. You don't see him much in this story. He's just like a cute little kid, but in the movie, he's like everyone's pride and joy kind of thing. But the mom does die in the most romantic Victorian pose, like despite being covered in blood. And also this like tragic scene because the dad, who's a doctor, like he's not able to save her, but he does save the baby, which turns out to be William. So fast forward 3 years later, Victor is now victim number one. Now, Victor is now so obsessed with like overcoming death itself and like harnessing electricity and understanding the electro impulses given off by the brain to the nervous system. And he's essentially like has these grandiose aspirations of overcoming and beating death. Right. So he goes off to Ingolstadt in Bavaria to go to University of Ingolstadt, continue his education and become a doctor and also like start up his own lab and research. So Victor comes very much from a family of means, right? They're very wealthy. So he can go off and rent a place and set up his own lab.
And this because of the size of his staircase in his family home, because that is the biggest fucking staircase I've ever seen ever. But yeah, that's part of what we were talking about before about Branagh's, grandioseness. It was like there's this giant, old style, and like it takes the universal monster staircases of the day, like Dracula has a big staircase, and it cranks it up to 15. And it just says, no, look at this staircase, how grand and sweeping it is. But then he does it again when we get to the lab and, Victor goes into this, I guess attic or, upper living room of this building. And the living quarters is very meager. And it's just like a bed. And you can probably touch one wall from the other wall if you really try. But then he opens the door to where the lab will be, and it's this grand, expansive, steepled roof,
huge area. And he's just like, laser focused on one thing, which is like expanding this research. He doesn't care if he ruffles people's feathers at the university, which he immediately does by referencing his like learnings of these old like alchemic and occult, philosophers and stuff from the past. This part in the book is awesome because it paints Victor as this like weird, curious, like emotionally disturbed, I dare say, like spoiled kid that we eventually have this mixed feelings of sympathy for, but also mostly just dread for. And in this story, they turn him into this kind of like heroic, like aspirational type.
Yeah.
And I don't love that. That's the one thing I don't love, but that's like they're trying to go for this old Hollywood type of thing. Like, we'll get a little bit more into it once the monster comes into play, but
well, yeah, even when, or I mean, even in comparison to, you know, the 1930s version, you still, I don't know, still Victor is just kind of like, he winds up trying to do the right thing in the end, but he still is just kind of like a bad guy. And this one, he does even more bad than he does good, but for some reason still comes out feeling, you know, as like this heroic character. And I think a lot of that has to do with just like how fast we're moving and how little time we spend on certain things, and how, you know, like certain scenes of confrontation when he's faced with the deeds he's done don't have the consequence they should. And but also the quick pace just gets him to his goals too quick as well. It doesn't feel like he has to work as hard, because right now we're in this part where he's like in Ingolstadt and he's going to, you know, the teaching pit. I don't know. I love the set, but I just couldn't help but call it the teaching pit. And then
it does. Yeah.
He just yells out. Like he was there no more than 5 seconds. He shows up it shows him showing up kind of late to this thing, and then immediately he's screaming out of like,
shoot mouth off.
Yeah. What about the philosophical? And he's like, no, that's quackery. Do not engage in quackery. And the fucking
you Swiss rat. He's like very, very anti-Swiss. But yeah, it's interesting because in the story, the same is true, but they take in the book, they're able to take so much time to suggest that like the all of the remorse that Victor feels in the book, he immediately like feels remorse, and you're hearing so much of it from his internal dialogue, and he is just riddled with guilt and anxiety and fear and just dread of the monster. And we don't get that on screen, so it makes Victor feel like he's more like this kind of almost fearless hero who takes a misstep and then has to try to make things good after he makes this mistake. And it's just like, that doesn't happen till the very end of the book, and even then he like just fails miserably, you know.
It's less of, like you're saying, it's less of the dread and more of, why does this guy keep fucking up my day?
Yeah. Well, in the book, it's just like, it almost gets to a point where you're like, you really learn to like, it's in a modern sense, it's so belabored for good reason, I think, in the book. I mean, it's a masterpiece. Like, I'm not criticizing it, but in the book, at some point, you're just like, Victor is bemoaning his horrible situation so much that after a while you're just like, he's playing victim because he's so remorseful and so terrified and so this, you know.
But also he turns out to be right, so
he does turn out to be right. So like, ultimately we do meet Henry Clerval, who is his we learn he just pops in and is like, hi, I'm happy-go-lucky student. We're friends now in this book because that's how it has to be. Or I mean, in this movie, because that's how it has to be. But Clerval is like his muse almost in even more so than Elizabeth in the book. So much so that you're like, it's really, they have a very homoerotic relationship in the book. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, they are almost more romantically involved with one another in the book than Victor is with Elizabeth almost. And they kind of sterilize that a little bit in the movie, I think, even though they don't come right out and say it's like a romantic relationship. It's much more of like a we're best friends and love each other deeply, but just as friends in the book. In this movie, it's just like we're buddy pals, and when in reality in the book, he almost like feels more strongly about Henry than he does about Elizabeth almost.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the movie, he feels like his goofus sidekick. You know,
Exactly.
he's like, oh, Henry, one day you'll learn to pass anatomy. You'll get it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like,
yeah,
I know I will, I guess.
yeah. He is like this like extremely loyal friend and is like a much bigger character in the book. But we do get introduced to Professor Waldman. By this point, Elizabeth and Victor are already like exchanging romantic letters by now. But John Cleese plays Professor Waldman, and he doesn't last long, but his fake teeth and wig are so distracting. Such a strange decision to put those fake teeth in there.
I'm glad
he already has British teeth. Just let him be, you know?
Yeah. I'm wondering if it was purposely done as a thing of like, because pretty much everybody has some sort of like fake. If they don't have fake teeth, they have fucking fucked up teeth. And I'm wondering if they put in the fake teeth as extra, as like he's a man of science, so he can afford to have fake teeth in this time.
He's very much an eccentric too.
Yeah, he's very eccentric.
So it doesn't seem that weird, but it is a little distracting.
Yeah, either way, he's talking over his teeth in a weird fashion. It's just very funny.
Yeah. Eventually Waldman does like open up about his experiments and shows them his like ape hand that can like he can reanimate and just like really empowering Victor to go buck wild on this stuff.
He got that gorilla grip.
He does got that gorilla grip, literally. They have we get introduced to what they call the sharp featured man in the book. But he's just like we really only see him for a few seconds in this because he's just been a creepy pox guy. That's like an amputee, and Waldman is essentially forcibly vaccinating people, like the peasants of towns, because they have this cholera outbreak that's happening and they don't want to be quarantined. But creepy pox guy's like, you ain't give me that jab, boy, and just stabs him.
The hero said, my body, my choice.
Yeah. And stabs Waldman, and Waldman dies. And then they go and hang, creepy pox guy. Victor immediately goes through Waldman's research like that night and decides to pick up where he left off. So again, things are happening constantly. You never take a breath. There's always the next thing happening. He goes and cuts down the pox man. There's much more deliberating in the book, as you might imagine.
Right.
We get into that moral question starts to come up of like him playing God, and just like in the book, like everyone else is kind of like, I don't know, buddy, and he's like really gung ho about it, which again stands to reason at this point. But now the cholera outbreak is really underway. And so he's got all the body parts he needs, right? He's got Waldman's brain. He's got the Poxman's body. He's got other parts. They do go as far as to show him how he gathered all this amniotic fluid that he needs for his big slow cooker, that he puts the monsters in. And he's just collecting it in buckets from like peasants giving birth. Which is a wild thing to add into the mix, and later becomes would become a real bottleneck in your operation, I would imagine, because I imagine that's pretty perishable stuff. But anyway, I haven't bought fresh amniotic fluid in a long time, so I don't know how perishable it is. But I imagine, and especially back then, they weren't, they didn't have modern pasteurization methods when you buy, just a jug of amniotic fluid at the store nowadays. Back then, that stuff didn't last.
You saying it's not shelf stable?
It's not. I do not think it's shelf stable now.
What about an eel guy? Do you have an eel guy that can get you eels on a quick?
I'm going to talk about the eels. There's some stuff falls apart a little bit. I'm not going to lie in this movie. Elizabeth then shows up and Victor has kind of lost it, right? Everyone's leaving because of the cholera outbreak, and Victor won't leave. Victor's lab, you kind of mentioned, it's this big, giant, expansive area, and now he's like, hey, he's working at a fever pitch here. He's like, I gotta get my creature up and running, right? So he's now, it's like this giant, life-size, shirtless game of Mousetrap, and like this was their big set piece, one of the big set pieces for the movie, right?
Yeah.
And for people who remember this movie, you probably remember, De Niro with the makeup. And you remember this scene of Victor Frankenstein running sweaty and shirtless around, his mousetrap machine, into his vat of electric eels and amniotic fluid. And he's got this big like bladder. It's a really cool set piece. Don't get me wrong. But it's very dramatic. It's very wacky steampunk version.
It's really hard to separate this now in hindsight, because at the time, sure, it was probably cool and kooky to see, but now all I can think about is fucking Wild Wild West, which is also kooky
steampunk. That is like the steampunk and now it's all I can not think about, just like him doing that awful southern accent and just like being racist, into like he's like, I'm gonna get you up, Frankenstein. Well, who was that? It was I keep wanting to say I in my head I'm picturing it being Gene Hackman, but I know for obviously it wasn't Gene Hackman. Who is Will Smith's counterpart in Wild Wild West? I'm picturing his face
Kevin
now.
Kline is his
Kevin Kline. Yes. Kevin Kline, the poor man's Gene Hackman.
Not at all related. R.I.P. Gene Hackman.
R.I.P. But interestingly, in the book, the actual science, and because you grow up watching Universal Frankenstein, and it's alive, and the Victor Frankenstein actually doing the experiment, bringing life. You watch Young Frankenstein, you watch freaking Tiny Toons, you watch all this stuff of the big scene where he creates life, and he's and it's this almost climactic thing, and you get it in this movie too. It's like an afterthought in the book. It's just like, I think I can do it. I've done it. You know what I mean? It really breezes right over it and gets more to like when things start to fall apart. But he does create his creature, as you might have expected. The creature flexes and busts out of his big, amniotic fluid tank. And this is when I'm like, listen, you've all heard of KY wrestling. Fuck KY wrestling. Amniotic fluid wrestling is where it's at, because there is a extended scene of them slipping and sliding, couple of shirtless dudes slipping and sliding around in a bunch of amniotic fluid.
It is so bizarre that this is what they decided to spend an extended period on, when everything else moves so quickly and you don't sit with a lot of meaning or consequence in a lot of scenes. But the whole I'm sliding around in the fluids with a naked De Niro time, and it's like, like what?
And it's clearly not even De Niro; it's some big jack dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's like, what was the idea, and was this Branagh's idea of really extending this scene out? Like, I get the idea of like, it's a birthing scene. He just came out of a chamber full of literal fluid, for birthing. And you're trying to get him to like stand up and, become a man, I guess. But like, I don't know. It goes on for so long. And there's that one, you think it's almost over. And then it cuts to him dragging the creature by both wrists across the floor, and it's like, what is this? What are you? Why does this need to be so long?
it's like a slapsticky element too,
Yeah,
where like
yeah.
he results in the creature like getting caught up in these chains, and then the chains go up, and he's just like hanging there with his like dick flopping in the wind from the chains. It's just, it does seem like they wanted that scene to be something that it did not end up being. You know what I mean?
No. Yeah, there's a couple moments of slapstick in this film that it like what?
There's another good one later when he kills the landlord when he comes to the house. He just like lifts him up head first into the thing.
Bonks him. Gives him a bonk.
Just gives him an old bonkaroo. So this whole middle sequence like is probably the part of the movie I like the least between all that, which I didn't hate them all slipping and sliding, but it does go along goes along kind of far. And then also Victor just like changes his mind within 30 seconds of reanimation. He's just like, it just feels abrupt. Like, it didn't work. Dude didn't work. And not just that, but like, I'm going to immediately say, like, literally, he still doesn't have his shirt on. He's still covered in the fluid. He has not had any time to reflect, but he is like, this was a mistake and I regret everything.
Yeah.
Really abruptly.
He writes down a bunch of notes about the creature. He's like, he came out malformed. He's all fucked up. He don't work right. He's got the poo brains. He writes down all those notes, and then just literally seconds later, he's like, I gotta destroy all these notes. like why bother writing that down if you're just gonna destroy it?
It's just rushed. It's really rushed. But he does go to sleep, and then he wakes up, to the monster, obviously, who's alive and flees, and then basically goes and hides like in a gutter, and is just like eating garbage. And then we get this like really fast scene of like the monster. There's a lot of confusion out on the street because the epidemic, and they see the monster and they immediately attack him, thinking that he's ugly, so he must be responsible for the plague. But then he just goes ape on some peasants, just like starts press slamming peasants, choke slams a peasant. It's pretty sick. But then he goes on escapes on a corpse cart that's being taken out of town. All right, so this is a difficult challenge, I will say, and I think they dealt with it fairly delicately. But in the book, the advantage that the creature has is not just that he's big and strong. It's that he's also inhumanly fast and agile. So in the book, he's like extremely fast, extremely agile, and extremely strong. Like he is like a fucking Super Saiyan, right? Without the spirit bombs and shit. Like he's like, but he's like extremely physically capable. And in the Universal movie, he's just a big, strong lunk.
Right.
Who's might as well be a zombie in the way he moves, In this movie, they kind of split the difference because he's not a big illiterate lunk. He is capable of like advanced thought and obviously gets into the philosophical stuff really deep, which is great. And he is really strong, but he doesn't have the crazy speed that he has in the book. That makes him really terrifying in the book.
Yeah. And I think it's probably a good decision that they didn't try, because
how would you have,
Yeah. Cause like speed is always just one of those things that gets really just bad when it's, like the only good representations of speed are in the X-Men films when they slow it down to slow motion. Sure. And like in Quicksilver moves at regular speed.
The only thing I could think of is the Matrix, even though they do slow it down in certain parts. Even when they speed it up, they do a pretty good job but that's like a martial arts movie. Yeah.
And it's a quick moment of speeding up. But like anytime you think of monsters moving fast in movies, it's always like, footage that's extra sped up. and it doesn't look good because you can just tell it's something moving at a regular speed advanced quickly. Whereas like if a monster is really going to cover ground, it's going to have a huge stride as well as just moving fast. Like you can watch a cheetah move and you go, holy fuck, that thing's fast. And that's because it's working in a harmonious movement that just tells you like, oh yeah, it's just going. It takes advantage of every
each
amount
stride,
of stretch.
10 yards long. Yeah,
every stretch is just like, every complete movement. And then if you see a guy running at normal speed, like even if you watch, athletes today, there's athletes today that hit like that 23 mile per hour type fucking running speed. And you watch them run and it's just a huge stride and you go, holy Christ. Like,
yeah. Usain Bolt's like, his one of his strides is 3 of mine.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm kind of glad.
Yeah, it would have came across clunky. That's why I said I think they did it as delicately or as like cleanly as they probably could have. Clerval nursed him back to health. Elizabeth, stays, and Victor's like, basically my bad. And meanwhile, the monster's out in the woods chilling, and also has a sick duster at this point.
Yep.
Like made a sick duster. His hair's kind of growing back. Like he's not all puffy and swollen. Like things have healed up a little bit. So I do love that they show how his appearance like evolves as he's like, post, reanimation. So this is a long part in the book that really you build a ton of sympathy for the monster, and they do a pretty good job of it, honestly, in this. And this movie, or this part in the book is like, or I'm sorry, in the Universal movie is really briefly displayed by when he finds the blind hermit in the woods in Bride of Frankenstein. Not in the original Frankenstein movie, but in Bride of Frankenstein. And so this is a more faithful adaptation of that, where there's this family and he's like helps them, and he really learns to, he observes them. He learns a lot of emotional intelligence from them. Meanwhile, he's reading Victor's journal, so he learns to read. They even show like how he kind of like makes lessons as they're teaching the children how to read, but also a little unrealistic in the sense that like peasants living out in the countryside in this time would have definitely not been able to read, by the way.
No.
Like none of them would have been able to read. But he helps them with his, harvesting their crops and yada, yada, whatever. He learns to care for this family. He wants to like reveal himself to the grandfather because he's blind and he won't run away screaming like anybody else would. But instead, he's forced to action when this asshole landlord shows up and starts like victimizing the family. And again, he just picks him up and jams his head up into the ceiling and just breaks his neck, gives him just bonks him to death, basically. Yeah. And then he reveals himself to Blind Grandpa, and Blind Grandpa's like, oh shit, okay, like, wow, you're really fucked up, because he touches his face and stuff. But he's there, he like understands that he talks to him without seeing him, and he doesn't get that initial judgment. So you think everything's going well, but then the family comes back, and it doesn't go well, right? So he runs off into the forest, and the family leaves. And then this is like, for not having enough time dedicated to it, like De Niro, I think, does a good job of delivering the emotion you need to see for the monster to start feeling sympathetic. And also he does mention the whole thing, which is a huge part of the book, which is the idea of he didn't ask to be created. It was almost an act of violence. He views as an act of violence, being like forced to be created from all these like scraps of people. And then his transition into like anger and bitterness towards his creator.
Leads to one of the more hilarious parts of this movie. He goes back to the cabin and finds that the family is fled, and then he sets the cabin on fire and says he will have his revenge, and screams Frankenstein into the camera. And I said, I now remember why this movie's bad.
Well, the only thing that would have made it worse is into the camera, screamed, and he makes basically the pose that Kane makes when the flames come out of the turnbuckles. Yeah. And if he would have went, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, that's the only thing that made it worse. It's the worst part of the movie by far. I don't know why they felt the need to do that. Why wouldn't he just make him gutturally scream or cry or wail? Like, why did he have to yell Frankenstein?
Yeah, I mean, well, most of the fucking lines in this movie are yelled, but I just rewatching this, I was just like, De Niro doesn't work for me. I don't like him. There are times and moments he has, and I wonder if there was some sort of friction between him and Branagh of like what Branagh envisioned and what De Niro envisioned, because they like the whole performance feels uneven, and more so than that, it just doesn't work a lot of the time.
It doesn't work a lot of the time, but I like the way he delivers the lines when he is talking to himself. But I don't love the way he delivers the lines. Like, I like when he delivers the lines when he's like feeling self-conscious. Like when he's talking to the blind grandpa, I really like. But then when he's like talking to Victor later, I don't really like.
Yeah, because that just feels like De Niro. And that's why I'm wondering if like there was friction between him and Branagh about what the vision should be, because it feels so totally different. Like when he's talking to Victor, he is just De Niro doing De Niro, and it's just kind of like, he's not even really.
Taxi driver's a monster now.
Yeah, he's not even really putting on, like when he does Max Cady. You know, Max Cady has a real character feel about him. Like he's this, unhinged psychopath. When he's doing Frankenstein, he's just kind of just like, just a little bit more gruffness to regular De Niro. And it's not like it's not like a pathetic. I guess I just wish there was like a more pathetic nature to him. Like that, I think it comes
across in the story a lot more. Like it comes across that he's more like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like forlorn. Like you imagine he talks like this in the story. You know what I mean? Like like a ghostly wailing way of talking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas in here, he's just like, I'm a big brute, and I think I have this later in my notes. It's just like, he just feels like a big, just like a big brute.
Yeah.
Which is not how he feels in the book.
Yeah. And then like, if there was like a pathetic nature to him, like when he's talking to Victor and he's like confronting him, he's like telling him like, hey, did you consider when you put me together where all this comes from? Was I created out of evil people? Was I creative? Because I'm telling you right now, I'm not learning. I'm just remembering the parts of these people. I was not taught to speak again like a child. I remembered that I could speak, and I remembered these words. I remember how to play the flute. Who of me is constructed, and just like that it should feel more torturous to him that he's comprised of all these different beings and that he has no sense of himself. But it sounds more like it's a rehearsed thing that he practiced that he was going to say to Victor when he saw him, instead of him just like pouring out emotion. Because the whole idea in the book is like, and he talks about it in here. De Niro says like, I possess more love and more fury and more rage and everything than you can like imagine. And in the book, you get that vibe that the monster is so emotionally unstable because he's like a live wire. You know what I mean? Right.
He's just, everything he feels is so heightened and over the top, and he's just reacting to it. Whereas in this movie, he's too subdued.
And it actually sounds like a fucking incel speech is what he's giving him. Like he sounds like a fucking incel. He's like, make me a hot lady because you don't understand how much passion I have. So many good things to give. I'm a nice guy.
I have good ideas.
Yeah, I'm a
I
nice
should be
guy,
employee of the month.
and I have good qualities, and you're not looking at my good qualities right now. And I swear to God, if you don't look at my good qualities, you're gonna fucking feel my bad qualities. And it just feels like an obnoxious incel speech, and it's just like, ugh. Like, yeah.
If Frankenstein had Facebook, he would like share that meme with Bugs Bunny with the pistol, you know?
Oh yeah. The creature would be posting it on Frankenstein's like wall. It's just like, don't ever turn your back on me, or else you'll find that I'm not the one to mess with.
Yeah, it's like vaguely threatening memes. He does have incel vibes. You're 100% right. All right, I'm going to speed up here because a lot happens, but they ultimately all end up going back to Geneva because Victor's going to practice there. Him and Elizabeth are going to get married. Henry's coming back with them, and the monster's like, I'm going to come back to Geneva because I'm about to wreak some revenge here. Ultimately, he finds out where they're at. He kills William, the young brother, and it's like a perfect revenge plot in the book, and in this it feels a little bit more like a crime of opportunity, which in the book I believe you do ultimately learn that it was, but just he seems like a Frankenstein, the creature in the book feels like a supervillain that's inescapable, and he can be wherever. You'll never be able to outsmart him. You'll never be able to outrun him. You'll never be stronger, fast enough. You are at his will. In this movie, it feels a little bit more like just like a series of bad luck a little bit, but they have to ultimately search for William. Also, I think in the book, if I recall, William's like body is found. Like it's more of a like a town setting, whereas this is like out in the boonies, it felt like. But anyway, the monster kills. Yeah, he kills William, which is his first step towards revenge, and then he also pins the murder by framing. I think her name's Justine. She's like one of the beloved of their maids, their servants, who takes care of William. But then it's confused. They don't really pull it off because when they go find William, they bring him back. He's clearly alive.
Yeah.
Like the kid's like grabbing them and hugging them, but as he was supposed to have been dead. And later Frankenstein tells him that he like killed him by like crushing his neck, basically.
Yeah. That doesn't line up. And then also just with Justine being framed doesn't line up because like she was with everybody else basically the entire time while they're searching for him, and it's not until like later that she breaks off while searching for him.
Well, and she goes in the book she stays out all night walking the town, like walking the streets looking for him. So she doesn't have an alibi until she finds him in the morning, and and then he's the one who finds him, I believe, in the book, if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong about that. But then they find the I forget if it's a locket in the story or not. It's been a little bit so I read it, but she finds I think it's a photo of some sort. And then that's how, because of course the monster does put it there.
Right.
But in this, and then there's a whole trial. And Victor doesn't believe that Justine did it. Nobody who knows Justine believes she did it, but the whole town does, and like the magistrate does. And there's like this multi-day thing of Victor going and like he's going to testify, and then also I think Elizabeth goes and testifies for Justine, but ultimately they still convict her in the book. In the movie, it's just a mob gets struck up, and which is not consistent with the story, but it has to move faster. Yeah, that's theme here. But yeah, I understand they have to move faster. So, and then also the monster keeps like putting clues. And in this instance, he just shows up and reveals himself to Victor and basically tells him like, meet me on the sea of ice, abruptly. And it's almost like that's the first time Victor really thought that the monster was actually still alive. Whereas in the book, he is like for months and months is agonizing because he has a year in the book. I think it's a year to make his bride and whatever. Well, we didn't get to that part, but it's a big buildup in the book to like actually seeing the physical monster because he kind of knows it's the case already. But in the story, it's just like Victor sees him. It's like, oh, you again? Wait, what?
There's a small part earlier in the movie when Victor is recovering and Henry says about how cholera is really on the rise right now, and it'll probably kill everybody. And Victor says, "Oh, thank God," because he assumes that the monster is going to get swept up in this wave of cholera.
Sure.
And then he doesn't think about it again. At least according to what we see in the film, he doesn't think about it again until this very moment where he gets patted on the shoulder and he goes, "Uh-oh."
Yeah, it's very happy-go-lucky. Whereas in the book, it's like he's agonizing, like I can't even marry Elizabeth because this monster is going to come back and fucking kill me and all this stuff. So we get a slow motion monster attack, jump from the top. It looks like Kane coming from the top rope. I'm not gonna lie. When he goes out to the frozen sea to face off with him. Then they slide down into these like ice caves down a sweet like little it's like a McDonald's play place. They get down under the ice into his hiding place, and then that's when they have this philosophical discussion and probably one of the better scenes in the movie. I don't know. It's the most interesting part of the story. Whether or not it's pulled off well in this movie is up for debate, but they talk about the ethical dilemma that is really like at the heart of the book. The things that make this like the grandmother of all like sci-fi novels is the most interesting part of the story, and it's represented basically in this one conversation in the book. I mean, I'm sorry, in the movie. So this is when he asks him for a companion and basically puts an ultimatum to it. Like you got to get your monster making kit out and you got to make me a companion, or I'm going to come and, take everything from you. And I'm going to visit you on your wedding night. If you don't give me my wedding night, I'm going to visit you on your wedding night. And it's much more in the book pleading, like emotionally pleading, but then getting angry and threatening. And then I'm so sorry. And then pleading. It's this emotional roller coaster. Whereas this, it's the incel speech, right? Unfortunately, which I mean, if it hasn't become apparent already, I haven't seen this movie in a long time, but just read the novel again, like after 20 years, and love the novel even more so than I did when I was a kid, and really disliked the movie compared to the last time I watched it. Didn't dislike it. It was entertaining, but it didn't hold up even close to what I remembered it as, unfortunately.
Yeah, the novel's great, and it is that set down of like, oh, here comes the Industrial Revolution. This is what it's going to do to our world. And Mary Shelley predicts techno-fascists, 200 years before they really become a thing, because now our world is invaded with these same nitwits who didn't learn from the book that said, hey, don't fuck with God and try to create or become things that are better than humanity, because it does not go well. Do not do not a fucking blueprint. And then every other subsequent piece of sci-fi fiction after that says the same thing. And still you have all these buffoons that are like, I'm going to put my brain into AI. I'm going to put AI into my brain. I'm going to do a whole bunch of weird supplements and exchange my blood with my son's blood to live forever.
Yeah. It's just unwise.
Yeah.
Unwise.
Did you not watch to the end of the movie? It's a mob that burns you in a windmill.
Well, I think there is a certain sect of like techno oligarchs that are like just get an idea and then shut off the movie before it's over because they get too excited and then they just run with it. Like, I think that's a bit that like the Simpsons have done. Like, I know like Whitest Kids You Know did that.
Yeah,
like I remember them all. But all right, let me wrap this up because we're getting towards the end here. But the monster is having his revenge, right? He kills the father, Baron Frankenstein. And they go out to try to hunt the creature, but the creature's always one step ahead of them. And in the best scene in the movie by far, which I do like that they went, all out on this one, which is Elizabeth, who's been this happy-go-lucky, fun, gal the whole time, if not Helena Bonham Carter kind of doing the scenery quite a bit here. Yeah, she's a little over the top, but it's 94. Okay. We didn't have the same impression of her in 94 as we do now. So the monster shows up as Victor comes to save her. The monster rips her heart out of her chest, shows it to her beating heart to him, shoves her ass over, sets her hair on fire with the lamp. Like, it's a pretty
it's so
gruesome, but also like kind of, like over the top scene compared to anything else that happens in the movie. And then just fucking jumps out the window, just goes, Hardy Boys fucking leaps out the window. Fucking swanton bombs out onto the fucking porch below. And then Victor has to bring Elizabeth back. So hurries up, fires up the monster machine. And this is when I'm like, first of all, who's getting you that much amniotic fluid and that short of notice? And also, who's been feeding all these eels?
This is the little bit of preposterousness is because he swore to never fire up the creepy crawler oven again, but then he just happens to have all the ingredients anyway.
Yeah, he's had it all. He's got it ready to rock. So, he tries to get his new creature to remember him. They do a weird dance. His other creature shows up, and Elizabeth's like stuck between the creature who she recognizes as like her, but also recognizes Victor. And she ends up just going, nah, dog, never mind. Sets herself on fire. She's having problems with the lamps today. Sets herself on fire, kills herself, burns down the whole property.
Really impressive burn though, because they have
great burn.
They have the stunt actor just running down this hallway that's engulfed in flame,
bouncing off the fucking walls.
In this big Victorian dress, like whatever dress it was, but it had like the big wire hoop skirt to it. And she's like bouncing off the walls and then kind of unceremoniously just falls off the top of that staircase that we mentioned before and just fucking flumps on the ground, which just
eats shit. Just like a sack of burning shit. I loved this sequence. I loved the falling, I love the burn and everything. I did wonder, once the creature, creature 2, Elizabeth creature is back to life, they almost get into this, like, you're almost expecting them to have like a tug of war with her, like, no, my wife, back and forth. And I'm like, the monster, now that he's done what he asked him to, why didn't the monster just twist his fucking head off? You know what I mean? Right. Rather than sit there and argue with Victor. Like, I get the idea that he had given his word, and he does say, like, when he rips her heart out, like, I'm a man who keeps his word or whatever kind of thing.
I keep my promises.
Like, you get what you want. You got what you want. Like, now Victor's trying to go back on it and take your creature wife. Just like fucking twist his head off,
Yeah. It's also just, it weirdly plays out like, like a divorced couple trying to lure the dog, no, come here. You love me, don't you? No. And
that's exactly what it plays like.
The weird part about that is, though, like, why doesn't Elizabeth creature remember that the creature is the one that murdered her. Like, I think eventually maybe that's the realization she supposedly comes to, but
yeah,
she just gets way too close to him. And, like it appears that he's obviously winning the, the game of like, here, you're like me, you come with me now. Whereas she should maybe have just like attacked him in some way, like, or
you would think
stabbed him.
so.
Like, as she
They
remembers, like,
play,
oh yeah, you're the one who fucking killed me and made me like you asshole.
well, it's funny because it's almost like she doesn't have much of a memory, except for she can recognize that she can recognize what she has or what she doesn't have, which is like a soul, assumedly, or something like that. She doesn't have whatever it is that makes a regular human. She recognizes that similarity between her and the monster, but yeah, she doesn't recognize him as the person who just killed her. But anyway, we're back to the present now, and he just explained all this to the captain of the ship that was in the opening scene. Victor's explains he's on his revenge tour now, which is a pretty extended part of the book as well. But also he's a sleepy boy and he dies, so he just kind of kills over and dies. And then the captain of the crew finds the creature in the cabin with Victor's body, the cabin of the ship, and in the bottom of the ship, and they realize everything that Victor said was true. They have this little funeral, and the end doesn't play out like the end of the book, but the end of the book was written a couple hundred years ago, so it's hard to make this the end of a movie and not piss people off, I guess. But they do this little funeral for Victor, and just as the funeral they're about to burn him, almost this Viking funeral type of thing, the ice explodes. The only way they foreshadow that is by hey, it's kind of warm today, and they're feeling hopeful that they're going to be able to the ice is going to break and they're going to be able to get out. But instead, just the ice just abruptly cracks everywhere and explodes into chaos,
upheavals of just the shelf upturning on itself and throwing people
there was
into
an
the water.
earthquake.
It's a bit much.
It's more than a bit much, but then they're still to the monster, come with us, we'll save you can come back with us or whatever. And he's like, I'm done with man. And he eventually goes out on the little floating, iceberg. Yeah, more incel shit. If he's the incel, on his way to the island of misfit toys on his little iceberg, his little ice float, and he ends up burning Victor's body along with himself. So it's a very schmaltzy ending.
Oh,
but it did.
You're missing when Heath raises the torch above his head and there's this grand drum roll. It's
it's very throwback again to the big Hollywood epics of the 50s. They finish with that big drum roll. They finish with the big swooping score, at the end. And it's it's really schmaltzy. It's really this big Hollywood epic that doesn't really translate to what is a really dark, really introspective story. But I think they do a decent, I feel like it was probably read as a really decent script, but they didn't pull it off very well.
Yeah. I think
inconsistencies with the story aside, they just don't really pull it off super well.
Yeah. So the script was written by Frank Darabont, and he's we like Frank. He does good stuff.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I think it was really kind of the insistence on being so close to the book that really hampers it, because the 1931 works really well because they just did a whole bunch of shit that was their own and cut massive amounts out and did their own kind of thing. This was so insistent on sticking so close to the book that you crammed in too much. You tried to do too much, and nothing has the appropriate emotional weight.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know.
What I think that would have, like anybody cares about what I think, but like if I was the Hollywood script doctor here, I think what I would have done is, because you have these two distinct kind of sections of the story post monster running off. You get the monster running off initially and going out and meeting the family and doing all that type of stuff and learning things. And then you get the second time where he leaves and basically gives Victor the ultimatum to make his companion.
Mm-hmm.
And in the book, that's a year. He says, I'm going to come back in a year and I'm going to be watching you the entire time. And there's a lot of really effective scenes in the book. There's a scene, I don't want to spoil it, but this book is 225. When did it come out? It's 200 years old.
So it's
over 200 year old book. Yeah. So, but there's a sequence where like he's actually working on it, and he gets pissed and frustrated, and he's kind of like starting to feel less threatened by the monster because he hasn't seen the monster in like months, and he freaks out and like destroys the part of the work that he's doing. And all of a sudden he looks out the window and the monster's been watching him the whole time out the window, in this like isolated cabin. You're like, oh, Jesus Christ, he has been watching. You don't
God
get any of that. Yeah. You don't get any of that in this book. And I feel like if they would have just focused on a smaller part of the interaction of like the monster coming to, and then just saying like, hey, you motherfucker, you made me exist, so you can't leave me on my own. And just gave him the ultimatum right there. I don't know, but just like, staying too close to the expansive, like big sections of the book and how they're laid out, really makes everything so forced. And you never get much development of Victor's character either.
The movie covers 21 years at least.
Mm-hmm.
Because it starts in 1794, but we go all the way back to 1773, and it's just like, and you expect to cover all of this time, and you can, but not in 2 hours.
This movie needed to be at least 2.5 hours long.
Yeah,
and even then, it would have still felt rushed.
Yeah, and you need to like, if he made certain cuts to certain things, like don't get to the point where you're setting Helena Bonham Carter on fire and everything. Maybe don't even have her like get changed. Like just get it to the part where like the monster kills her, and then just let that set off the chain of him chasing the monster. Like let that be the chain. Don't let this whole other sequence just belabor it, and then you can spend more time with the philosophy of things. But I don't know. There's a lot of ways to do it. But I was reminded, I haven't seen this film since it was on VHS, and I was reminded why I haven't seen it since it was on VHS.
Watched it a few years ago, I think it was, and remember thinking like, oh, this is kind of fun because it stays closer to the book. And then I went back and, like I said, reread the book after, God knows, 25 years or whatever, 25 years, and was like, wow, this is really great. Now I'm going to watch the movie again. And then it just really shed some light on the movie. But anyway, guys, that was Mary Shelley's Frankenstein from 1994. So, Steve, why don't you remind the boils and ghouls at home how we're going to do this with the Patreon movie?
So with the patrons, it's gonna be basically a 2 vote. So if Brian and I wind up picking Black Sunday, the patrons will just win, and Dan will pick what our punishment film for next week will be. But if either Brian or I divert and don't pick Black Sunday, or there's always the chance that one of us can just give up our first vote and pick another movie, then we'll go with the winner from that. But if it comes down to where, Brian and I divert our second votes to something else, then it'll go to the social media, and you guys at home will pick who the winner of the Victorian Horror Showdown is. So with that in mind, Brian, I'm going to have you vote first.
Yeah.
And then I vote. You vote first.
So
not me.
Here's the thing. If I I talked a lot of shit on this movie because frankly, if I would have watched it more recently, I wouldn't have picked it. But it is still an entertaining movie, and I still like the effects, and I still, for the most part, like the performances. It is extremely difficult to live up to one of the greatest. It would be a very easy argument to make for a lot of people that Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the book, is the greatest and certainly the most influential piece of genre fiction ever written. Mm-hmm. So to live up to that in a film, a 2-hour film, is damn near impossible. I mean, it's impossible, right? In my mind. So I think they did a serviceable job of this, and they made an entertaining movie based on a book that has a lot of like internal dialogue in it, right? It's a hard thing to put to screen. I think they did a decent job of it, and they made it entertaining. I don't think they didn't stick the landing by any means. And if there was another movie here that between yours and the patrons that I absolutely love, I think I would actually do the rare thing, which is to not pick my movie for the first pick.
Yeah.
But I don't actually really particularly enjoy either of the other movies either. Like, I feel like we all kind of now there is one that I think stands out, but I don't think it stands out enough for me to pick it over my movie for my first pick. So I am going to stick with my movie for my first pick.
Okay. Yeah, I believe I said this when going into this, that I could have just easily picked Bram Stoker's Dracula, and I for sure just would have won. Like, there's no way you would pick fucking bum-ass Frankenstein.
Mary Shelley's
Yeah.
No, certainly not.
Yeah, you wouldn't have picked that over pervert Gary Oldman and Keanu Reeves.
No, that movie rules.
Yeah.
It's crazy because we talked about, like, it's so much the opposite. Like, I'm almost done reading Dracula right now, and like Frankenstein versus Dracula, the novels, it is night and day.
Right.
Frankenstein is a vastly superior novel, in my opinion. I think in most people's opinion, than Dracula. But these particular two remakes of the early 1990s, Dracula is vastly superior.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're sticking with your first vote, I'm sticking with my first. So what's your second?
My second is again, I don't love either of these movies, but I will say this: one of them, its shortcoming was that the end wrapped up, I think, in too pleasant of a little bow, which was Black Sunday. But I think there's a bit more egregious error or egregious mistake in Crimson Peak, which is that it's just well executed, but unremarkable. And I'd rather have something that is unique and stands out, but is sloppy, than something that is polished and completely unremarkable. So warts and all, I'd rather have something that is innovative and different. And especially for 1960, Black Sunday is that. And Crimson Peak is just like unremarkable and also fairly boring at parts, which is about the worst thing a movie can be to me, is boring. And I will say Black Sunday, even though the ending stinks, it's not boring. For a 1960 movie.
So you're grading on a curve.
I am grading on a curve. Yeah. Because one's 2015 and one's 1960. But for I watch a lot of movies from that era. I watch a lot of 50s and 60s horror and sci-fi, especially that kind of gothic stuff. I love that stuff. And this is pretty fast-paced and active compared to a lot of movies of its time.
Yeah. And we said it before, how like all the A to B's and everything in that movie makes sense. Like there's plenty of films from the 50s and 60s that just kind of stumble their way into finishing. So yeah. At least Black Sunday does make sense to get to its end.
Yeah. So I am gonna say I'm gonna go with Black Sunday, a movie that I will watch again. I would watch Black Sunday again. I'm not rushing to. I'm never gonna watch Crimson Peak again.
Sure.
It's just
sure.
So I'm going Black Sunday.
Yeah. I like Crimson Peak, and I don't think Del Toro did a bad job. And
certainly not.
He made a love letter to Victorian horror, rather and it's commendable because it's an original piece of fiction. So he didn't have anything to just hold him back in an adaptation, which is why I think the script is really good and tight as far as like doing A to B's. I wasn't really bored by it, but 2 hours is 2 hours anyway. But yeah, that's why I still stuck with it. I still think it's like the most polished, it's the best, but that's why I stuck with it. Frankenstein is a fucking mess. It's slapped together with its crazy editing and its weird choices of like, what do we focus on? Oh, we'll spend an entire minute of slimy man slip around time, but some things of certain consequence only get like 20 seconds of screen time maybe. And I like less. Yeah, I like Branagh as a director. I respect him as a director because even today he still puts out these grand portrayals. Death on the Nile has like some pretty great set pieces, but some real dog shit actors. Like, he needs to find a different casting director sometimes, I think. He just
maybe
just like some
also bold decision to be the actor director in this.
Hey, he's a good actor too. Like he is a good actor. I really like even though it was forced upon us as kids, I do really like his 1996 Hamlet. I just like it. But yeah, this film it runs into a problem with Frankenstein itself isn't necessarily Victorian horror because it was written in 1818. And it's much more, it is gothic horror, but it is also very focused on like the Industrial Revolution, and it is steeped in the romantic classical position and just kind of that confluence. And so it comes before the pure Victorian era, but it is viewed as like a Victorian work of fiction because it would have been very popular during that time. I don't think Branagh does enough to lend to that Victorian feel of gothicness either, because everything is so grand, and also he does a lot of the steampunk. There's some dirty, messy bits that do feel like, even though we're in Ingolstadt, it does feel like the underbelly of London with like the teaching hospitals and the cholera stuff. There's a little bit of that in there, but overall he feels more.
Come on, we're doing waltzes to harpsichord music here. Come on, give me a break. When we're at the house and the big grand staircases.
that feels more romantical classical. Like that's pre-revolutions for anybody. In 1773 we're doing dances. So yeah, I just don't feel like it. Frankenstein itself was not a pure Victorian work, and then Branagh doesn't do a necessarily good Victorian adaptation of like making it feel gothic. He makes it feel big and theatrical and like an epic,
Sure.
he's mixing stage and golden era filmmaking, but it doesn't feel like Victorian per se. Whereas the Black Sunday does. Black Sunday has like the creepy gothic aesthetic that hits you in the very beginning and sticks with you the entire time. And it's fucking witches and ghosts and ghouls and all that type of shit. So yeah, I will go with Black Sunday as my pick as well, even though it may feel formulaic. At least the formula is complete and it does it properly. So
sure. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to argue. Like I said, this movie that I picked, if you were on the last episode where we picked it, I had in my head it was Horror on the Battlefield the whole time, and then had to come up with a selection last minute. And boy, did it really bite me in the nutsack. All right. So that means that once again, our Patreon representative, which is Dan in this instance, is taking home the taking home that Sumbitch Championship strap for the month of March, which means Dan gets to also choose our punishment for next week. I am eager to see whether he has one. Dan, if you've got one that you want to pop in the chat live, you're certainly welcome to. If you want to think on it, you can certainly do that as well. Currently celebrating with fireworks, or is that a that almost looks like a Star of Bethlehem situation there, perhaps.
Yeah, it does
sure.
Look a little bit like Christ Star, but it says fireworks when you mouse over it. So
okay, so good. All right, it is fireworks. Okay, so Dan says he doesn't have one in mind. He did ask whether The Lock-In has a sequel. The Lock-In is, of course, an anti-porn Christian propaganda movie made by some of the worst human beings I've ever seen on film in our Patreon series. As to my knowledge, there is not one, unfortunately.
No.
And to my knowledge, there is not a St. Patrick's Day Magic Puppy movie either, which is a damn shame. So we will hold tight until next week or sometime next week, where Dan you can share your punishment movie for us, and we'll watch it this week, and that'll be our next Monday punishment mini-sode. So, all right, Steve, anything else before we wrap up this March Showdown episode?
Nope, that's it. Should have done Dracula.
You should have done Dracula. I should have done anything else. Really a poor showing from us here in March. And Steve, I suggest we get our fucking shit together in April, because we really poor showing throughout. Yeah. And I feel like I dragged down the team because I did a poor showing, which made you feel less empowered to do a good movie. So you picked a movie you never saw before. Yeah. We just really, I really brought the team down here.
Hey, I was curious, like I said, Guillermo del Toro doesn't do bad movies, but this isn't necessarily his best, and so that's fine. Yeah. But yeah, I just was more curious. I knew how to win, but sometimes I'll do mercy rule. I felt bad for you because you didn't even fucking remember what the damn topic was, and then you're just like,
I did.
I'm gonna do Frankenstein. I'm like, I don't remember that movie being bad. I want to see if I can. Yeah. I was also challenging myself. I was like, well, maybe I can win without using a nuke. Can I win that way? And I couldn't.
Yeah. Well, I did. I gave into my, my desire to rewatch it after reading the novel again recently. And obviously that did not play to my advantage at all. So, all right. Well, fuck me, guys. We'll give it another go next month. In the meantime, we'll have a punishment episode from Dan on the next episode. Yeah. So that wraps us up for March. That means for the Halloween is Forever crew, I'm Brian.
And I'm not Frankenstein. I'm the Frankenstein's monster.
Frankenstein. I was just going to end by screaming Frankenstein into the mic.
Frankenstein!
He said it. He said the name of the movie. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.